The Seattle Seahawks are in the driver's seat in the tough NFC West. But wait, Dan, how can that be? They're tied with the 49ers and Rams at 4-2, and they've already lost to the 49ers. Well, I'm not only going to tell you after this, I'm going to give you 5 reasons that the Seahawks are now in the driver's seat in the NFC West. That's coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Hey, if you guys want to take in the American League Championship Series, the Mariners now with a 1-game lead on the Blue Jays. Watch parties down at Fast Fashion Brewing in Soto on First Avenue, right across the street from Showbox Soto, right next door to Hooverville. And if you're going to go check out games 3, 4, or 5, now that we know that at least 5 games will be required in this series, and you're heading down to Soto, hop in there, say hi to my buddy Matt Storm, and try some of his tasty beers. Or if you can't get into the ALCS in the home games, they're doing watch parties for them as well. So definitely check that out. In the meantime, like, share, subscribe this video. It's the best way to help support the channel. All the other ways you can do that are listed and linked down below. The Seahawks and the Mariners do have something in common today. They both traveled to the Eastern time zone to play red-hot teams. I was told after Game 5 on Friday, when the Mariners wrapped up the ALDS in that 15-inning historic win, that they had no chance against the Blue Jays, and yet they found a way to win yesterday. Just like a lot of people thought that the Seahawks really had an uphill battle playing the Jaguars this week. The Jags were that team. You know, there's always one or two to start the season. They got beat by the other one last week. The Bucs now 5-1 after beating the 49ers yesterday. But the Jags were kind of that it team, right? They're young, they're hot, they're coming off a huge win on Monday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'll say this for the Jaguars. Really impressed with Liam Cohen in the job that he's done there so far. I had mentioned during the week leading up to the game that I thought, one of the factors was not only a short week, that doesn't seem to be as much of a factor anymore in the NFL. Teams have gotten really good at learning how to respond from that. But coming off such a big win, beating Kansas City, a team that went out again yesterday and reminded us all they might be the best team in the AFC, that they might be poised for a little bit of a letdown. But I didn't see it. They came out playing hard. And in fact, obviously, the Seahawks were behind early in this one. But let me get to my 5 reasons, first of all, that I believe this team is now in the driver's seat in the NFC. Number 1, it locks them up with the Niners and Rams, as I mentioned at the top. It puts them back into that 3-way tie. The tiebreakers are all very much in play, even though right now the 49ers are in great shape at 3-0 in the division and own all the tiebreakers. Well, those aren't going to mean much later on in the season because they'll all play each other again, right? And now, unfortunately, the 49ers, man, the hits just keep coming. The injuries, it's as remarkable as the job that Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh have done in getting that team to where they are, given all the injuries that they've suffered, not to mention the defections of really good players and like foundational players that they let walk away in free agency in the offseason. You can only withstand so many, especially to players like Fred Warner. Just one of the great players in this league. He's going to wear the gold jacket someday. Unbelievable. Best middle linebacker in the league, hands down. And to lose him at some point, that's going to have an impact. Right? It did yesterday, and they end up losing to the Buccaneers on the road. We'll see how it goes. Their schedule is pretty favorable over the next 7 or 8 games, so we'll see how that unfolds. But still, Seahawks still have a game against them at the end of the year, right? They still have both of their games against the Rams remaining, and that's huge. So I'm sitting here making the case that Seahawks control their own destiny within the division because they still have that in front of them. And that wasn't the case as much a couple of weeks ago. It kind of looked like we talked about this game being really pivotal in so much as non-divisional games get early in the season. Sometimes we tend to dismiss the importance of them other than obviously getting one in the win column, stacking wins, as Coach Macdonald likes to say. But for a non-divisional game, a non-conference game, this one was huge. If the Seahawks had lost this to drop to 3-3, I'd be sitting here talking about how it's an uphill battle now to go through the rest of the season. But this is what it looks like. Everyone 4-2. The Cardinals dropped to 2-4. I mean, I don't know where that's headed. That's a whole nother ballgame. And then when you look at the point differential, who, as so astutely pointed out by Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic yesterday, as we get deeper into the season, point differential becomes a more instructive statistic. Typically, the better teams, as the season goes along, have a positive point differential. And the Seahawks right now at plus 49, 19 points better than the Rams. All right, let's get back to number 2 reason the Seahawks are in the driver's seat in the NFC West. The schedule starts to tilt now in their favor. It's not quite as easy, and I hesitate to use that word, but it's not quite as favorable as the 49ers schedule, as I mentioned. But they do control their own destiny. And given the aforementioned injury situation with the 49ers at some point, even if you go back, if you look at 49ers content creators and reporters and analysts over the last 24 hours, even they agree that, some have gone so far as to say the season's over. I don't agree with that at all. That coaching staff, and there's enough talent there, they're going to get Brock Purdy back and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk, and et cetera. And they still have Christian McCaffrey playing at a high level when we thought that maybe he was going to be on the downward end of his career. Never count them out. But injuries are a factor. Seahawks are certainly experiencing that also, not to the extent that the 49ers have. But it's mostly about the Seahawks now controlling their own destiny. They come home, play a Monday night football game, and I know everyone's worried about the home field advantage and what that's become. It's one of the most complex, intriguing, remarkable things we've seen, right? Mike Macdonald has now won 9 out of his 10 games as head coach on the road, and yet still can't wrap their heads around how to win at home. I have maintained and will continue to, until I'm proven wrong over a much larger sample size, that there's no real correlation there. They just haven't played as well at home. Has nothing to do with, week 1, there was a lot of 49er fans in the stands, or, people selling tickets, corporate environment kind of tamping down some of the intensity that crowd used to bring. It's just they haven't played as well. And they have an opportunity now to get back on Monday Night Football in that environment, right? Night game, national TV, all of that, against a Texans team that's kind of hard to read, kind of hard to figure out. But this is what ESPN has it looking like early in the week. They've got the Seahawks as a slight favorite, a 51.5% chance to win in their matchup predictor. I think they've got them as a 1.5-point favorite. Haven't checked the other lines, but I would imagine they're probably around that. Texans are coming off a bye, which is often an advantage. Gives them a chance to self-scout, get healthy, kind of work some things out on that offensive line. And that defense through 5 weeks has been pretty terrific. Number 1 in the NFL in points allowed, just 12.3 points per game. And yet they're 2-3. They lost their first 3 to the Rams, Bucks, Jags, teams we're all familiar with. Their wins came against a winless Titans team. And if you remember their win last week, it was against that depleted Ravens team, basically playing their B squad, and blew them out by 40 points, a Ravens team that looked nothing like themselves. They were much more competitive, at least in the first half yesterday, against the Rams. But still, that rebuilt offensive line for the Texans really plays into what we saw from the Seahawks defense yesterday, and especially the pressure that they bring. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. That offensive line for the Texans ranks 29th and 27th currently by Next Gen Stats, pass blocking win rate and run blocking win rate, respectively. And then the Seahawks have their bye, and that's the opportunity for them to get a little healthier. We'll see this week if we're going to get Witherspoon back, or Love back, or Reek Woolen back. I would expect him back at minimum. But then a chance to get even healthier coming out of the bye. Robbie Oots might be coming back at some point. And so we'll see how that works. And then a Washington Commanders team, again, that lacks a real quality win. And they lost to the Falcons. So even though they're 4-2, they're kind of a hard team to read. And then the Cardinals at home, and who knows what they're going to look like by then. My goodness, not only now are we questioning the offensive play caller, the head coach, now is there going to be a quarterback controversy? Jacoby Brissett playing for the injured Kyler Murray. Sounds like Murray might be out for a couple of weeks. Brissett gave them a chance to win yesterday. At least had them competitive in that game. And then they get their chance week 11 against the Rams in LA and an opportunity to really put it all together and make a statement and take one step closer to really contending for this division. No gimmies there, but they're all winnable games. The heavy lifting in the division is still ahead of them. That's why I think that I can safely say that I believe they control their own destiny. Number 3 reason that they are now in control in the driver's seat in this division. I think Mike Macdonald proved his mettle once again yesterday. And for those of you who had some doubts or maybe some leftover PTSD of failed promises from defensive-minded head coaches about how I can't believe what I'm seeing on the field, we're going to fix it. He came out this week, put it all on himself. I didn't prep him well enough. I didn't call the right plays on Sunday. That's on me. And then we go into this game and we're still worried because Derek Hall's still out and Woolen and Witherspoon and Love and all that. And my goodness, they look like a different team. I mean, put all those fears away. Playing without all those guys, coming off, giving up 35 at home, playing the hot team in Trevor Lawrence and that offense and as good as the Jacksonville Jaguars could be defensively as well to keep them in games. And they pressured Trevor Lawrence from the opening kickoff all game long. 50% of his dropbacks, the Seahawks pressured Trevor Lawrence. The first half, the number was 64%. And here's the kicker. While most thought that the adjustment that Macdonald would make was sending more guys, blitzing more, something he doesn't like to do. They were blitzing at the 30th lowest rate in the league going into that game. So we thought we might see some more of that. Well, they blitzed at 14% yesterday, and yet still were able to pressure Lawrence on half of his dropbacks. We love our friend Seahawk Nerd on this show. And this is what he said going into the game. One of the best analytical minds out there. One of these days, got to get him on the show. He said, this is a prove-it game for Mike Macdonald, something we talked about during the week last week. Last week, he gets the excuse of unexpected injuries. They happened in-game. This week, he knows exactly who's available to play on defense. How do you adjust and what's your game plan? Does it work? Well, this is what he tweeted in follow-up to that after the game. Figured it out. Figured out how to press on the Jags' weak spots today. Defensive line matchup hunting and blitz looks put Lawrence and the offensive line under constant duress. So, again, didn't send more guys, just made it look that way. That old term that we hear all the time in relation to Macdonald and the other guys that run his scheme, simulated pressures. It worked against Lawrence. He goes on to say, it forced throws away from the middle of the field where the Seahawks were so vulnerable the week before. Now they got hit on that touchdown to Brian Thomas Jr. I don't know why I stumbled on his name there, maybe because he's been such a letdown for my fantasy team, but that's neither here nor there. But it was the middle of the field that Baker picked on constantly, and that we saw the real issues. The drops weren't deep enough from the linebackers. The zone wasn't working. The one touchdown to Thomas was a clear communication issue between, I think it was Shaq Griffin and Nick Emenwari, two guys that just haven't played together that often. Both of them thought they were taking the guy in the flat. They both, went towards him. Thomas ends up sneaking behind him for the easy touchdown. You knew in the moment that was a coverage bust. And in the moment, because of what we saw last week, sure, there was some consternation. Like, is it going to be like that today? But they really locked it down after that. He finishes by saying he's every bit the elite coach we know him to be. Leads me to my fourth reason that the Seahawks are now in the driver's seat in the NFC West. The defense showed they can still dominate, even shorthanded, even missing 4 key starters. All game up front, one of the guys in this, and there were many, Byron Murphy was an absolute menace. Brady Henderson tweeting this yesterday. Per ESPN research, Byron Murphy II had 7 pressures today, the most by a Seahawks player in a game since Carlos Dunlap. Incredible, too, considering we're talking about an interior guy here, playing 0 tech, 1 tech. The most by a Seahawks player in a game since Carlos Dunlap also had 7 against the Bears in 2021. Yeah, an edge guy. Murphy had 2 sacks, giving him 4.5 on the year. Like, we thought Pittsburgh was his best career game. I mean, this was it. And when you hear what he went through during the week with having his first baby, he and his wife, and now it was born premature and really light, and it's in intensive care, although it sounds like, baby and mama are doing great. Apparently he spent very little time at the facility this week, spent very little time at practice, and yet put a performance like that out there. Meanwhile, like I said, he wasn't the only one. DeMarcus Lawrence, thank goodness he was back this week after missing 2 games with that thigh bruise. He had his best game of the year. Clearly had 0 sacks going into before the injury, even though he was, ranked in the top 10 in next gen stats in run stop win rate among edge players, and also was part of that group that was pressuring at a top 5 high rate in the league. 2 sacks yesterday, 2 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits. Uchenna Nwosu, how good is it to have him back and healthy and playing at a high level? 3.5 sacks now in the last 2 games, or in the last 3 games. He had a sack and a half yesterday and 4 quarterback hits. And shout out to Drake Thomas. I know the weak side linebacker position on this team is one that everybody thinks they need to upgrade, and Thomas is a guy that isn't taken seriously. He is clearly the starter now after essentially a timeshare between he and Tyrese Knight. Going into this game, he played the vast majority of snaps yesterday, ended up kind of filling up the stat sheet. Had a sack, had a tackle for loss, had a pass defense, had a quarterback hit, tied for the team lead in tackles with 9 with Nick Emenwari. Just absolutely great performance from that defensive front yesterday. Really keyed things, especially because we saw the impact of missing those guys in the secondary yesterday with the coverage bust on Thomas. We saw a couple of questionable reps from Josh Jobe yesterday. Wasn't his best game. I think we're starting to see, sometimes what do they say? Be careful what you wish for. All of those of you that a couple weeks ago wanted Reek Woolen traded, wanted him off this roster. Well, that's what that secondary looks like without your best cover corner there. Might have looked a lot better than even it did yesterday without Reek back there. For my 5th and final reason why the Seahawks are in the driver's seat, and then we'll wrap this all up and summarize it right after this. Hope y'all are enjoying the Sleeper app, and if you're not, it just got better. This deal over here, don't even need to make a deposit. They're just going to give you $20 free for your daily fantasy picks and your games of skill, and you can enjoy all of that. But if you want to go beyond that, they're still going to match that first deposit up to $100, 100% if you use the promo code FOREVER. This is my favorite sports app out there today. It's one of the reasons it's the fastest growing app out there, certainly the #1 game of skill app. You can, if you're not in our Pick'em League, picking games each week, of which I am 10-2, 10-3 through last night's game, bounced back after a rough week, having a good one with 2 games left tonight. And that's with, I didn't get my pick in on time on Thursday, and so I missed that. So 10-3 despite that. But we're having a lot of fun doing that. You can play fantasy sports, daily fantasy as well, all the sports. And my favorite thing about this app really is how you can follow games with live, real-time, play-by-play updates. And you can even react to each play and chat with the rest of the community. So again, $20 free just for getting in there and signing up. No deposit required. And then they're going to match that first deposit up to $100, 100% if you use the promo code FOREVER. Check out the Sleeper app today. But wait, there's more. Omaha Steaks has extended their Red Hot Sales event where you can save 50% on their best variety packs and more. Tell you about that in a second. These are USDA certified stacks. They are individually cryopacked. They are delivered to your door in a cold case. They also have burgers and franks and desserts too. But these guys have been in business for so long. This is how long they've been in business that I ate these steaks as a kid. It actually goes back way farther than that. They've been in business since 1917. That's because it's a quality product, and you should try it today as well. Go to omahasteaks.com. Check out their best variety packs that they have available. You'll get 50% off plus an additional $35 for being a viewer of this program if you use the promo code FOREVER. That's at omahasteaks.com. Use the promo code FOREVER for 50% off plus an additional $35. All right, so finishing up, my fifth and final reason why I think the Seahawks are in the driver's seat now in the NFC West is everything I just talked about, and the defense and how they've been able to respond with injuries and coming off a bad performance, and Mike Macdonald and the adjustments he's made, and how the schedule lines up well in their favor. The offense. As much as they got most of the attention the last few weeks, especially coming off that Tampa Bay game with the outstanding performance from Sam Darnold and just generally his performance all throughout the season, nothing changed on that narrative yesterday, but it's more the fact that this offense seems to find a way to respond in games even when everything isn't going well. We even saw that week one when the play calling was still a mystery and extremely frustrating. Really got away from everything that we have seen since then, and now Kubiak wants to and has been operating this offense. They had a hard time running the ball against the Jaguars. Couldn't really do it. Now, they're not the first team. Jags came into this game 8th in the league in rushing yards per game at 91.5 yards, held Seattle to 60 yards total yesterday, just 2.3 yard per carry average. And I didn't always love the play calling in this one. Obviously, the goal to go where they gave the ball to Zach Charbonnet up the middle 3 straight times made no sense. Gave me PTSD back to the Jets game last year with Ryan Grubb. We'll talk later in the week about maybe what that might have looked like. I would have liked to have seen him get Sam Darnold on the move, maybe try to spread him out there a little bit. Darnold's so good in the red zone. Proved that last year. Minnesota was really good in the red zone too, especially with short to go. Don't know why they didn't go there. Maybe they were just trying to make a statement, but there were other issues in this game as well in the second half where I didn't think Kubiak was as good as he's been, and yet they respond when you're starting to think the game might turn away from the way you want it to. They respond. The 61-yard touchdown to JSN, the one-play touchdown drive in the second quarter, when their first 3 drives ended in 2 punts and a field goal, gave them a lead for good. And it was one of those moments where you instantly think, okay, now we can get going. And it was literally as good as you can throw a football. Just an absolute perfect bomb from Sam Darnold, and this is becoming more of the norm. Here is another great stat from PFF. Sam Darnold on deep passes since 2024. Here's where he ranks among all quarterbacks in the NFL. Completions, first. Completion rate, first. Yards, first. And yards per attempt, first. And that connection with JSN, after, they've never played together before this offseason, working in OTAs, they look like a pair that's been playing together for years. Really, really remarkable. And then on the last drive, when they needed to close that thing out and try not to give the ball back to the Jaguars and give them a chance to pull something out, although, with that 8-point lead, tying it is the best they could have done, but still, you're nervous. It was one of those games that felt good, but until that final whistle wasn't really going to exhale, and then the 61-yarder to A.J. Barner did just that, closed it out, finished off the game. They were able to go to victory formation with over a minute remaining. You don't see that very often in this league. We're seeing that any doubts you had about Sam Darnold because of 2 bad games last year and the bad playoff performance, of which I've said over and over again, if you want to put that all on him as a quarterback and not spread any of the blame around there for that complete meltdown on offense from the Vikings last year, then I question your football knowledge. But now, as the sample size grows, now you're talking, what's the math? So 22 of his last 24 games, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in this league, period. And I think if you want to throw 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other names at me that you think are better, they've probably had 2 bad games along the way as well. The larger the sample size goes, the more that even Sam Darnold doubters have to admit this guy's a damn good quarterback. And it's so It's so much fun to watch, and it gives you so much confidence because of what I said at the top. Even when things aren't going all that well, you just start to get the idea that they can still put a drive together or at least make a play and flip the field and get him down. Are there concerns? Yeah, this isn't all just rainbows and butterflies. JSN being the only consistent offensive weapon might not be sustainable, although we've seen week 1 is the best example of that even when they take everybody else away and start, by they, I mean the opposing defense, and that was a really good one over there, even when they pay attention to JSN, as every team is going to now, as the primary weapon, they still find a way to make that connection, still find a way to make it work. And it does open things up for other guys in key moments. But we'd like to see more consistency spreading the ball around and getting some other guys involved. I'm still waiting for the running backs to get involved in the passing game. And not necessarily design screens. That just feels like something we don't get to have in Seattle. It doesn't matter who the play caller is. It doesn't matter what their history is. Clint Kubiak has a great history of involving his running backs in the passing game. But just get it to him in space. And haven't been doing that yet, so that's a concern. And the running game has to be more consistent. We're seeing signs, but in this game in particular, never really broke loose. They were able to overcome it, but if you want to compete against the Rams, and if you want to beat good defenses and good teams in crunch time in games in November and December, let alone January, got to be able to run the ball more consistently. I've got some questions about the snap share there with Walker and Charbonnet. I just, as bullish as I've been on Charbonnet over the years, I just don't see it. Not in this offense anyway. He's just not effective. Walker is clearly the better guy, and so why is that a 1-to-1 carry share? And why aren't you getting Walker involved in the passing game? Had a career high last year, number of catches, and was really effective there. Even as a guy to just dump it off. The pressure started to ramp up a little bit in the fourth quarter yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Kubiak didn't get Darnold on the move as much in this one when it felt like that was the play, that when the Jaguars were getting pressure, it was interior pressure. So get him on the move. Get the ball out into the flat, into space, to Ken Walker. Really want to start seeing that. But in the meantime, and I almost put this as one of the 5 reasons, but that offensive line's ability to protect Sam Darnold and give him time to operate this offense efficiently and consistently is one of the biggest storylines of the year. It was the biggest question mark in the offseason. And I think it's one of the biggest answers that we've gotten to this point so far. In the last 2 games against very good pressure defenses, only 1 sack and 6 quarterback hits allowed of Sam Darnold in the last 2 games. This team is still growing, but along the way, they're finding ways to win games and come back from tough moments in games. We're starting to see now, there was a lot of but you beat the Steelers week 2. They're not very good. They're 4-1. That's objectively good. When you win 80% of your games, that's good in this league. The Jags, as I said, were the darling of the league coming off a big win over Kansas City, who proved themselves again last night. And then their 2 losses, obviously a play away from winning week 1. And they had a good chance to come back on that final drive against the Bucs, ended in a turnover against 2 really good teams, 2 of the better teams in the league right now as things stand. Those are their 2 losses, and they came on the last play of the game. There's a lot to feel good about. In summary, after 6 games, the Seahawks are in excellent position to contend for and win this division when just 2 weeks ago, that looked in question. If they had lost this game, as I said earlier, I might be sitting here today instead of doing this and talking about how can we right the ship. Now we're playing from behind. Now it's an uphill battle to get back even with the 49ers and Rams. Tiebreakers regardless, because they're still all ahead of us, and take a shot at this division. Whereas now, I truly believe this team has the best path forward to win this division. Do you agree with me or not? That's what the comments are for. I want to hear what you have to say down below. And then give me your early concerns or optimistic viewpoints on how you think they match up against the Houston Texans coming in here on Monday night. How do you feel about that one? Who was your player of the game yesterday as well? Tell me all that stuff down in the comments. Again, shout out to Fast Fashion Brewing. Shout out to Sleeper, the Blue Wire Network. And if you're down in Soto at any point this week, either for Mariner-related reasons, or if you're going to the game next Monday, you gotta like those late games. You get more time to pre-function and enjoy yourselves. Slip into Fast Fashion Brewing and try some of their tasty beers and say hello to Matt for me. I'm Dan. Again, you can hit that QR code right there if you like what I do. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Check out all the ways down in the description. You can support me as well. Until next time. And I know, again, let me just finish by saying this. Thank you to all of the birthday wishes and the outpouring of niceties that I got online. Really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you for giving me the weekend. I know I promised you a video on Friday, and then we had a little unexpected, had to leave town a little bit earlier for family reasons than we had expected. So we'll catch up to that video that I promised you a little bit later the week, as well as all the other content. So thanks for giving me the weekend off. Told my fiance yesterday, it was not hyperbole. Best birthday I've ever had. It was a huge milestone. Had an amazing weekend with her. It was nice to kind of set the phone down and not be as engaged over the weekend. No knock to you guys. And then the Mariners and Seahawks really stepped up and helped out as well. And damn, those Cougars almost did too. Almost pulled off the unthinkable 31-point underdogs. End up playing the Ole Miss Rebels to within 3 on the road. That was fun as well. So, go Mariners, but also, forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching, you guys.